in the hospital room notices that the baby is covered in tiny, grubby handprints. They're far too preoccupied with the woman who's screaming at him. Her hair hangs like wires ripped from a fuse box, so laden with grime that they stick out at the sides of her waxen face. An expression appears there that is quite unfathomable, but looks as though her bones are struggling to break free of her skin. Her eyes, though, they hold meaning. Two pewter dams of sorrow, panic, and betrayal. They threaten to burst as the woman raises a shaking, pointing hand. "That is not my baby," she says, her head quivering. "That is not George." There are 4 other humans in the room, and not one of them spares a glance for the baby. Because, of course he's George. And furthermore, why wouldn't he be George when he was born and given that name just 1 short hour ago? Not George, for his part, lies in the cot and wriggles. If his newly formed brain could wonder anything, it might wonder if life is always going to be this noisy. 2 of the humans are nurses, shuffling on the balls of their feet like a couple of spoiling heavyweights. They're ready to act if the woman makes a lunge for the baby. The nurses share a look, brown eyes meeting green, and wonder if they're wondering the very same thing. These episodes are happening much too often. Too many women screaming with that look in their eyes. 7 this week. There must be something in the water. "You need a drink, darling. You'll scream your throat raw. Hush now, and take this." The words are spoken as the only man, George's father, races to the sink. The faucet pours libation with an icy hiss not a foot from where the baby lies in its cot. George's father doesn't look at not George. He doesn't need to. His wife is his concern. He's heard of this. He knows what's wrong. He is an educated man. The woman falters on her juddering legs, collapsing back onto the hospital bed. She cups her water with all of her fingers and thumbs, looking out on the assembled crowd from under a hooded brow. She is the only one who actually wants to look at the baby. But she's already done it so many times this morning, and no matter how many times she looks, she doesn't see what she wants to see. In the corner of her vision, a tiny foot kicks into the air above the rim of the cot. The woman shakes her head, the wiry hair starting to sag under the heavy weight of despondence. It is the turn of the last human to speak. Until now, she sat like a statue in the far corner, her brow resting heavily on one pressured thumb. There is a faint pink mark where she's been rubbing the same temple, beneath the grey line of roots where her hair needs bleaching. She rises from the chair with an impatient lack of grace and wends her way towards the woman who sips the water. Settling on the bed beside her, a heavy, lined hand rests atop the woman's shaking shoulder. "We knew this might happen, darling girl," says the older woman. "Your mother had the same problem with you." The younger woman drops her water, and a thin torrent of shiny liquid starts swirling its way back towards the sink. She turns her head away from the older woman and her hoarse words, wanting to shake her head, but not quite managing it. Because she can't be sure that what she's saying is right. A mother is supposed to know these things, and the woman only knows what she sees. "This isn't like that, Gran," she says, her lips pale and shaky. "I don't want to hurt my baby. I want to find him. I want to find George. That is not George over there." "Babies grow quickly," the older woman says with a smile, "and they change every day. It's wonderful to see them changing, darling. You'll see. The defeated eyes meet the glassy grey orbs of the older, wiser soul. The young woman looks deeply into a face that speaks of a lifetime's worth of certainty. You, the woman stumbles, wanting so desperately to hope again. You really think that's George over there, Gran? Of course it's George, says the older woman. Of course it's George, darling. When the woman rises this time, the nurses don't move to stop her, though their feet still bounce like they might get their chance to enter the ring at any moment. George's father is on hand at the sink, where the runaway water is soaking into his shoes, but all his focus is on his wife. He was told the story of her mother, but he didn't believe that sort of thing ran in families. He's an educated man, and educated thinking can change everything. Come on, sweet, says the man. Come and see your George. Not George has his eyes closed until the shaky footsteps of the woman are near enough to disturb his half-sleep. Fluttering back to full vision, the baby sees the bright lights of the hospital room above him once more, then the growing shadow of the wire-haired creature overhead. The woman peers down, reaching with both her slim, pale hands to touch the warm bundle as he wriggles in his bed. She brings her face close to the baby, watery eyes pouring all over him. And then she sees those marks, the tiny handprints on his skin. And she knows, a mother always knows. What are you? The woman screams, making a snatch for the child, but George's father is close enough to stop her swiping fingers. The nurses have missed their initial shot and overcompensate by wrestling the woman back towards her bed. She can barely feel their violence over her panic and the fear rising in her chest. George, my George, where is he? What have you done with my baby? It is only when the needle sinks into her skin that the woman stops screaming. The baby doesn't cry once amid the chaos. George's father takes that as a good sign that there's only one screamer in the family. The older woman holds his hand as the two humans watch the other two settling the unconscious woman back into her bed. They'll try again later when she wakes up, and perhaps someone in a white coat will come along to write a prescription or two. It's going to be all right, the older woman says, squeezing his fingers. They can do wonders with pills these days. George's father nods and returns to the baby's cot. Not George is roused again by the sound of his squelching shoes. George's father sees those grubby little marks that must have come from a speck of dirt on his blankets. They don't look like handprints to him. Of course they wouldn't. He is efficient when he cleans them away. He won't ever give them another thought. He is an educated man who leaves wet footprints on hospital floors. There is another set of footprints near the water, but nobody notices them. They are small, as small as the handprints were, and from human height they look like splashes from the place where the cup fell. The footprints lead out of the hospital room by way of an air vent just big enough to fit a newborn baby through. And the footprints lead to the thing which made them. The thing with grubby little hands that leave black marks on whatever they carry. The thing reaches the end of its journey with the screams of that awful woman ringing in its long, hairy ears. It rubs them with its hands, pouting in soreness, and approaching a place between the floors of the hospital, where 7 tiny cribs hold 7 tiny babies. The thing passes one of them with a little grin, tickling its feet. George makes a merry gurgle at the touch. Beside the babies is another thing, larger and senior to the first one. He is the maker, and his small friend, the carrier. The maker sits at a ramshackle bench, a paintbrush in one hand and a swirl of flesh-coloured magic in the other. The carrier watches him craft for a moment, both hands working on a lump of matter which will soon become the replacement for baby number 8. 8 is a lucky number for a new round of changelings, but the things will have to be more than lucky to nab this last one. Do a better job of it this time, says the carrier. I think they're starting to notice. Hey everybody, it's Break. I really hope that you enjoyed today's story, the first in a little series of drag king horror-esque storytelling that I'm bringing to you. If you like what you see and you're interested in how I create the looks, how I create the stories, that kind of thing, please do be watching me on twitch.tv. It's Tuesdays 5 to 8 p.m. on twitch.tv/Mr. Breakdown, BRAKE, where you can catch me doing all sorts of shenanigans, chatting with fans, doing makeup, interviews, lots of cool things coming up, so I really hope to see you there, and you'll see me create the looks that become the end result for these videos, basically. I hope you'll stay tuned. I'm hoping to bring you at least one of these videos every week for the next couple of months, so I hope you'll stick with me for a very special Drag King story time, MBD style. See you for the next one.